Picture this. You walk into a grocery store on what seems like an ordinary evening, but something catches your eye that makes you stop in your tracks. A young cashier's hands are trembling so violently she can barely hold the scanner. Most people would look away, mind their own business, and move on with their lives. But not Marcus Thompson. What he discovered that night would shake him to his core and prove that sometimes the most powerful act of kindness comes from simply asking one question: are you okay? Stay with me, because this story will restore your faith in humanity and show you how one person's courage can change everything. Before we dive in, if you believe in the power of compassion, please hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Your support helps us share these incredible true stories that remind us what it means to care for one another. It was a chilly Thursday evening in November in the small town of Maplewood, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. The autumn leaves had already fallen, creating a carpet of gold and crimson along the sidewalks. Main Street was quieter than usual, with most people already home, settled in for the night with their families. Marcus Thompson, a 34-year-old single father, pulled his blue Honda Civic into the parking lot of Friendly's Market, a small family-owned grocery store that had been serving the community for over 30 years. The neon sign flickered slightly, casting an uneven glow across the nearly empty parking lot. In the passenger seat, his 8-year-old son Jake was unbuckling his seatbelt, chattering excitedly about his upcoming school project on dinosaurs. "Dad, did you know that the T-Rex had teeth as long as bananas?" Jake asked, his eyes wide with wonder. Marcus chuckled, ruffling his son's brown hair. "Is that so, buddy? Well, we better get some groceries before those dinosaurs show up looking for dinner." Jake giggled and grabbed his father's hand as they walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and they were greeted by the familiar smell of fresh bread and the soft hum of refrigerators. Marcus had been coming to this store for 3 years, ever since he and Jake had moved to Maplewood after his divorce. It wasn't the fanciest place, but it was clean, affordable, and the staff always treated Jake with kindness. That mattered more to Marcus than anything else. They grabbed a small cart, and Jake immediately claimed his usual spot, standing on the bottom bar and holding on to the handle. "Can we get the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets?" he asked hopefully. "We'll see," Marcus replied with a smile, though he had already mentally added them to his shopping list. After working a 10-hour shift as a mechanic at Johnson's Auto Repair, saying no to his son's simple requests felt impossible. They made their way through the store methodically. Milk, bread, eggs, some vegetables that Marcus hoped Jake would actually eat, and yes, the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Jake helped by pointing out items on the shelves and occasionally adding his own suggestions, most of which involved candy or cereal with cartoon characters on the box. "Dad, look!" Jake pointed excitedly at a display of Halloween decorations that were marked down for clearance. "Can we get a skeleton for next year?" Marcus considered it. The decorations were heavily discounted, and Jake had been so good lately, helping with chores without being asked and doing his homework without the usual negotiations. "All right, pick one." And Jake's face lit up like Christmas morning. As they finished shopping, Marcus noticed the store seemed unusually quiet. Only 2 checkout lanes were open, and there were just a handful of other customers scattered throughout the store. The soft instrumental music playing overhead seemed louder than usual in the emptiness. They headed toward the checkout lanes, their cart now filled with a week's worth of groceries and one plastic skeleton that Jake was already naming. "His name is going to be Bones McGee," Jake announced proudly. "That's a perfect name," Marcus agreed. The cashier at our chosen lane appeared to be in her early 20s, with shoulder-length auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her name tag read Emma, but as they approached, Marcus noticed something that made him pause. Emma's hands were trembling. Not just a little tremor from being cold or tired, but a noticeable, persistent shaking that seemed to be getting worse as they got closer. She was trying to scan items for the customer ahead of them, but Marcus could see her struggling to hold the scanner steady. "Dad, why is the lady's hands moving like that?" Jake whispered, tugging on Marcus's sleeve. "Shh, buddy," Marcus said softly, but his eyes remained focused on Emma. Something was definitely wrong. The customer ahead of them, an elderly woman buying cat food and frozen dinners, seemed oblivious to Emma's distress. She was digging through her purse for exact change, counting out quarters and dimes with painstaking slowness. "I think I have 17 cents here somewhere," the woman muttered, dumping more coins onto the counter. Emma tried to smile and be patient, but Marcus could see the strain in her face. Her breathing seemed shallow, and she kept glancing toward the back of the store, where a middle-aged man in a white button-down shirt stood talking to another employee. That must be the manager, Marcus thought, but why did Emma seem nervous about him? Finally, the elderly customer found her 17 cents and shuffled away with her bags. Emma took a deep breath and turned to Marcus and Jake with a clearly forced smile. "Hi there. Did you find everything you needed tonight?" she asked, but her voice had a slight quaver to it. "We did, thank you," Marcus replied, watching her carefully as she began scanning our items. Her hands were still shaking, so much so that she had trouble gripping the milk jug to scan the barcode. Jake, in his innocent way, noticed too. "Are you cold?" she asked Emma. "My dad has a jacket in the car if you need it." Emma's smile became a bit more genuine. "That's very sweet of you, honey, but I'm okay. Just a little tired." But Marcus could see she wasn't okay. He had learned to read people during his years in the Army before Jake was born. Body language, facial expressions, tone of voice. They all told a story, and Emma's story was one of fear and distress. As she continued scanning, Marcus noticed other things. The way she kept glancing toward the back of the store, how she seemed to be rushing, as if trying to get them checked out as quickly as possible. The slight bruise on her wrist that was barely visible beneath her uniform sleeves. "Emma," Marcus said gently, causing her to look up. "Emma, are you sure you're all right? You seem upset about something." Her hands paused mid-scan, gripping a box of cereal tightly. For a moment, her careful composure cracked, and Marcus saw something that made his chest tighten with concern. Pure, undiluted fear. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "Really, I just need to finish up here." Marcus looked around the store. The manager was still by the deli counter, but now he was looking in their direction. When Marcus caught his eye, the man's expression hardened into something unfriendly. "Dad?" Jake tugged on his sleeve again. "Is something wrong?" Marcus knelt down to his son's level. "Hey, buddy, why don't you go look at those comic books by the door? I'll be right there, okay?" Jake nodded and skipped off, happy to have a few minutes to browse the comic rack that he always begged to visit. With Jake out of earshot, Marcus turned back to Emma. She was scanning the last few items, but her hands were shaking so badly now that she dropped the box of crackers twice. "Emma," he said quietly, leaning slightly forward, "I can see that you're scared. What's going on?" She glanced quickly toward the manager, then back at Marcus. Tears were forming in her eyes, but she blinked them back rapidly. "I really can't talk about it," she whispered. "Please, I just need to finish this transaction." Marcus felt a familiar surge of protectiveness, the same feeling he got when he saw Jake being picked on at school, or when someone treated his son unfairly. This young woman was clearly in some kind of trouble, and every instinct he had was telling him not to walk away. "Look," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "I don't know what's happening, but I can see that you're afraid of something or someone. I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safe." Emma's composure finally broke. A single tear rolled down her cheek as she finished bagging his groceries with trembling hands. "He makes me stay late," she whispered, so quietly that Marcus had to strain to hear her. "After everyone else leaves. He says it's for extra cleaning duties, but—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Marcus felt his jaw clench and his hands ball into fists. "Who? The manager?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She nodded miserably. "Mr. Peterson. I've tried to avoid being scheduled for closing shifts, but he makes the schedule and he always puts me on nights when it's just him and me here at the end." Marcus's mind was racing.
This young woman was being terrorized by her boss, and she felt trapped because she needed the job. It was a story as old as time, but that didn't make it any less infuriating. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. 3 months, she replied, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Ever since I started working here. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting, you know? Maybe he was just being friendly. But then it got worse." "Worse how?" Emma glanced around nervously. "He finds reasons to touch me. Puts his hand on my back when he walks behind me. Stands too close when he's talking to me. Last week he cornered me in the supply closet and told me that if I wanted to keep getting good hours, I needed to be more friendly with him." Marcus felt sick. This beautiful young woman, probably not much older than his younger sister, was being harassed by a man old enough to be her father, and she felt powerless to stop it. "Have you reported this to anyone?" he asked. She shook her head. "Who would I report it to? He's the manager. The store owner lives in Florida and only comes by once a month. And I need this job so badly. I'm putting myself through community college, and I can barely afford my rent as it is." Marcus understood the impossible position she was in. No one should have to choose between their safety and their livelihood. But for too many people, especially young women like Emma, that choice felt very real. "Emma," he said firmly, "you don't have to put up with this. There are laws against what he's doing, and there are people who can help you." "But what if I report him and nothing happens?" she asked, fresh tears streaming down her face. "What if he fires me anyway? What if no one believes me?" Before Marcus could respond, they both heard footsteps approaching. Mr. Peterson was walking toward their checkout lane, his expression stern and his eyes fixed on Emma. "Emma, is there a problem here?" he asked, in a voice that sounded polite but carried an unmistakable threat. "You seem to be taking an awfully long time with this customer." Emma immediately straightened up, trying to compose herself. "No, sir, no problem. I was just finishing up." Mr. Peterson's eyes moved to Marcus, sizing him up. Marcus was not an intimidating man by nature. He was average height, with a lean build from years of physical work, and he generally preferred to solve problems with words rather than confrontation. But right now, looking at this predator who was terrorizing Emma, he felt every muscle in his body tense. "Sir, your total is $47.32, Emma said, her voice now steady but hollow. Marcus handed her his debit card, never taking his eyes off Mr. Peterson. The manager lingered for a moment longer, clearly trying to assert his authority, before walking back toward his office. As soon as he was out of earshot, Marcus leaned toward Emma again. "What time do you get off tonight?" he asked. "We close at 10, but he'll probably keep me here until 11 or later," she replied miserably. Marcus checked his watch. It was already 9:15. He made a decision that would change both of their lives. "I'm going to wait in the parking lot. When you're ready to leave, I'll walk you to your car." Emma's eyes widened. "You don't have to do that. I don't want to cause any more trouble."
"You're not causing trouble," Marcus said firmly. "He is, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let you face that alone." He called Jake over, and they gathered their groceries. As they walked toward the exit, Marcus turned back to Emma one more time. "My name is Marcus Thompson. I'll be in the blue Honda Civic right outside. When you're ready to leave, just look for me." Emma nodded, and for the first time since they had started talking, Marcus saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. Outside in the parking lot, Jake was full of questions. "Dad, why are we sitting in the car? Aren't we going home?" Marcus thought carefully about how to explain the situation to his 8-year-old son. Jake was mature for his age, having dealt with his parents' divorce and the subsequent changes in his life, but this was a complex and adult situation. "Remember the nice lady who checked out our groceries?" Marcus asked. "Emma? Yeah, she seems sad." "She is sad, buddy. Someone at work is being mean to her, and she's scared. So we're going to wait here and make sure she gets to her car safely. Jake nodded solemnly. Like when Tommy was picking on me at school and you talked to his mom? Exactly like that, Marcus said, proud of his son's understanding. Sometimes we have to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. They waited in the car, watching the store through the large front windows. Marcus could see Emma at the checkout counter, helping the last few customers of the evening. He also saw Mr. Peterson moving around the store, occasionally stopping to talk to Emma in what appeared to be increasingly aggressive conversations. At 10 o'clock, the store lights dimmed, and Marcus saw the last customer leave. But Emma was still inside, and so was Mr. Peterson. "Dad, are we going to wait much longer?" Jake asked, yawning. Marcus checked his phone. It was 10:20. He sent a quick text to his neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, asking if Jake could sleep over with her grandson Miguel. She responded within minutes, saying of course, and that she would come pick Jake up. "Change of plans, buddy. Mrs. Rodriguez is going to come get you, and you're going to have a sleepover with Miguel. Won't that be fun?" Jake perked up immediately. Miguel was his best friend, and sleepovers meant stand-up late playing video games and eating junk food. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived 15 minutes later, and Marcus quickly explained that he needed to help someone and would pick Jake up in the morning. She didn't ask questions, just gave Marcus a knowing look and told him to be careful. After they drove away, Marcus settled in for what he now realized might be a long wait. Through the store windows, he could see Emma at the checkout counter, apparently doing cleaning tasks while Mr. Peterson watched her. The body language was unmistakable. She was trying to stay as far away from him as possible, while he kept finding reasons to get closer to her. At 11:30, Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. Mr. Peterson had cornered Emma near the back of the store, and even from a distance, Marcus could see that she was backing away from him while he moved closer. Her body language screamed fear and distress. That was enough. Marcus got out of his car and walked toward the store entrance. The front doors were locked, but he could see a service entrance on the side of the building. He tried the handle. It was unlocked. Marcus had never considered himself a hero. He was just a single dad trying to do right by his son and make an honest living. But as he quietly entered the store through that side door, he knew he was probably about to do the most important thing he had ever done. The store was dimly lit, with only the security lights providing illumination. He could hear voices coming from the back, Mr. Peterson's low, threatening tone, and Emma's higher voice, clearly distressed. He moved carefully through the aisles, staying low and quiet. His military training from years ago was coming back to him. How to move without being seen, how to assess a situation before acting. As he got closer, he could make out what they were saying. "Come on, Emma," Mr. Peterson was saying, in a voice that was trying to sound cajoling but came across as menacing. "You've been working here for months now. Don't you think it's time you showed a little appreciation for all the good hours I've been giving you?" "Please, Mr. Peterson, I just want to finish cleaning and go home. I have classes in the morning." "Classes can wait. This is more important. You want this job, don't you? You want me to keep giving you those prime Saturday shifts?" Marcus reached the end of the aisle and carefully peered around the corner. What he saw made his blood run cold.
Peterson had Emma backed against the wall near the employee break room. He was standing close enough that she had to turn her head to avoid his breath on her face. His hand was on the wall next to her head, effectively trapping her. "I've been very patient with you," Peterson was saying, "but my patience is running out. I think it's time you and I got to know each other a little better." Emma was crying openly now. "Please, I just want to go home." "Not until you show me how much this job means to you," Peterson replied, and Marcus saw his free hand move toward Emma's face. That was when Marcus stepped out from behind the aisle. "I think the lady asked you to let her go." Both Peterson and Emma spun toward the sound of his voice. Peterson's face went from predatory confidence to shocked anger in the span of a second. "What the hell are you doing in my store?" Peterson demanded, stepping away from Emma but blocking her path to the exit. "This is private property and we're closed." Marcus walked steadily toward them, his hands visible but ready. "I came to make sure Emma got to her car safely. Looks like that was a good decision." Emma looked at Marcus with a mixture of relief and terror. "Marcus, you shouldn't be here. He'll call the police." "Let him," Marcus replied, never taking his eyes off Peterson. "I'd love to explain to the police what I just witnessed." Peterson's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment at being caught. "You didn't witness anything. I was just talking to my employee about her performance." "Is that what you call it? Because from where I stood, it looked like you were sexually harassing her." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Peterson's mouth opened and closed several times before he found his voice again. You don't know what you're talking about. Emma is a valued employee, and I treat all my staff with respect." Marcus looked at Emma, who was now standing as far from Peterson as the small space would allow. Her face was streaked with tears, and her whole body was shaking. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "do you feel like you're being treated with respect?" She looked between Marcus and Peterson, clearly terrified of the consequences of telling the truth, but something in Marcus's steady presence gave her courage. "No," she whispered, then louder, "No, I don't." Peterson's face darkened. "Emma, I think you're confused about what happened here tonight. Maybe you should take tomorrow off to clear your head." The threat was crystal clear. Speak up and lose your job. But Marcus wasn't going to let that intimidation stand. "Actually," Marcus said, stepping closer to Peterson, "I think Emma's going to tell me exactly what's been happening here, and then we're going to decide what to do about it." The confrontation in that dimly lit grocery store was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. What Marcus discovered next about Emma's situation would shock him to his core and force him to make a choice that would change both of their lives forever. What Peterson did next would prove that some people will go to any lengths to protect their secrets, and what Emma finally found the courage to reveal would set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. But that's a story for part 2, because what happened next in that store, the decision Marcus had to make, and the incredible way this community came together to support Emma will restore your faith in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things when someone needs help. Stay tuned for part 2, where you'll discover the shocking truth about what Peterson had been doing to other employees, how Marcus risked everything to protect Emma, and the amazing way this story ends that will bring tears to your eyes.
Peterson's face twisted with rage as he realized his control over the situation was slipping away. "You have no idea what you've walked into," he snarled at Marcus. "This is between me and my employee." Marcus stood his ground, positioning himself between Peterson and Emma. "Not anymore, it isn't." Emma took a shaky breath and stepped forward. The fear was still there, but something had changed in her eyes. "Marcus, there's something else you need to know," she said, her voice growing stronger. "It's not just me." Peterson's face went pale. "Emma, don't you dare!" "There were others," she continued, ignoring Peterson's warning glare. "Sarah quit 2 months ago because of him, and Jessica before her. He told me if I ever said anything, no one would believe me because I was just a part-time college student." Marcus felt his anger building, but he kept his voice calm. "How many others, Emma?" "At least 4 that I know of. All young women, all part-time employees who couldn't afford to lose their jobs." Peterson stepped forward aggressively. "That's enough. You're both leaving my store right now, or I'm calling the police." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Good idea. Let's call them together." He dialed 911 and put the phone on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a sexual harassment incident at Friendly's Market on Main Street. I've witnessed a manager cornering a female employee against her will. Peterson lunged for the phone, but Marcus stepped back smoothly. The dispatcher confirmed they were sending officers immediately. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars arrived. Officer Jennifer Martinez, a woman in her 30s, took Emma's statement while her partner, Officer Davis, spoke with Marcus and Peterson separately. Emma's hands were no longer shaking as she described months of harassment, intimidation, and threats. With Marcus there for support, she found a strength she didn't know she possessed. "My coming to work made me feel afraid, but I couldn't afford to quit. I'm paying for school and supporting myself," she told Officer Martinez. "You did the right thing speaking up. No one should have to endure this." While the police took statements, Marcus called Emma's parents, who rushed to the store within 20 minutes. Her mother, a kind-faced woman named Carol, wrapped Emma in a fierce hug. "Why didn't you tell us?" Carol asked through her own tears. "I didn't want to worry you, and I was afraid you'd make me quit school to move back home," Emma admitted. Her father, a tall man named Robert, shook Marcus's hand firmly. "Thank you for protecting our daughter when we couldn't." The investigation moved quickly. Officer Martinez contacted the other former employees Emma had mentioned. Sarah and Jessica both agreed to give statements, and their stories painted a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation. By morning, Peterson had been arrested and charged with multiple counts of sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment. The store owner, Mr. Friendly himself, flew in from Florida immediately upon hearing the news. 3 days later, Marcus received a call from Emma. Her voice was bright and hopeful in a way he hadn't heard before. "Marcus, I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "Mr. Friendly offered me the assistant manager position, and he's implementing new policies to protect employees. He also said he'd help pay for my business management classes." Marcus smiled. "That's wonderful, Emma. You deserve all of that and more. But there's something else. I've been in touch with Sarah and Jessica. We're starting a support group for workplace harassment survivors. We want to help other young women find their voices before they lose hope like we almost did." 2 weeks later, Marcus and Jake attended the grand opening of Friendly's Market under new management. Emma stood behind the customer service counter, no longer just a cashier, but assistant manager, her hands steady and her smile genuine. "Dad, is that the lady we helped?" Marcus nodded. "That's her, buddy."
"She looks happy now," Jake observed with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Yes, she does." Emma spotted them and waved them over. "Marcus, Jake, I'm so glad you came." She knelt down to Jake's level. "I never got to properly thank you for being so kind to me that night." Jake beamed. "Dad says we should always help people when they're scared." "Your dad is absolutely right," Emma said, standing and looking at Marcus with gratitude shining in her eyes. "He taught me that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to ask if you're okay." As they left the store that day, Jake looked up at his father. "Dad, are you proud of what we did?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I'm proud that we didn't walk away when someone needed help. That's what good people do, Jake. They pay attention, and they act with kindness." 6 months later, Emma graduated from community college with her business degree. She sent Marcus a photo from her graduation ceremony, smiling broadly in her cap and gown. The note read, "Thank you for believing me when I couldn't believe in myself." Emma's support group grew to include over 30 women in their community. Peterson pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years of community service focused on workplace safety education. Marcus never considered himself a hero for what he did that night. He was simply a father who recognized fear in someone else's eyes and chose not to look away. But sometimes the most heroic acts are the simplest ones. Noticing when someone is hurting, asking if they're okay, and staying to help even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Emma's hands never shook at work again. And every day, as she helped customers and managed her team, she remembered the single dad who asked one simple question that changed her life. Are you okay? Because sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes one person's willingness to care is enough to transform fear into courage, silence into strength, and a victim into a survivor. If this story moved you, remember that you have the power to be that person for someone else. A simple act of noticing, caring, and standing up for what's right can change someone's entire world. That's the true power of kindness. It doesn't require superpowers or special training. It just requires a willingness to see when someone is hurting and the courage to do something about it.